Hey everybody, I am here a few minutes early, so I'm just gonna chill out for a little bit until I see people starting to arrive. I think this might be the first time I'm actually early for something, but the babies are in bed. Daddy's handling bath time, so here we are. I won't dive into the topic until I see more people arriving, but I guess in the meanwhile, I'll give you a little update. 2 weeks ago, the last time I did a talk, I was still at the end of writing my agony book, Prince of the Doom City, Book 3, and I am very pleased to announce that it is now done. I sent it off to ARC readers yesterday. It's not really done. Usually once I finish a book, I read through it twice before I even send it to the ARC readers. And I'm not going to lie, this time I just couldn't do it. I read it through once really carefully and caught what I could. But I don't know, this book was so hard to write, and I'm proud of how it turned out, but I really feel like I just lost a lot of objectivity on it. Like I found myself like during the second read through just like hating the way I'd put words together and just like hating the sentences and just like not even able to see the story anymore. I was just so like convinced in my head that the writing was bad. So at that point I'm like, you know what, this is not going to help anybody. I'm probably going to hurt the book actually, like trying to fix these problems. So I sent it off a little more rough than usual to my ARC readers, and I do apologize to them. But they are beautiful, wonderful people, and they send me nice long lists of, typos that they find, and I send those off to my copy editor, and in a week or so I'll get it back from her, and I should still have plenty of time to give it one more read through before I actually hit publication. So I'm not worried about it too much, and I think honestly just a little bit of time away from it will be all that I need to actually like the book again. And the initial feedback I've gotten from a handful of ARC readers has been really positive, oh, this is my new favorite, this is the best in the series. So hopefully that means it isn't actually the worst thing that I've ever written. I don't often have agony books, as I call them. I've had a few. This one, obviously, The Sunfire King, was honestly an agony book for me. That one was just really hard to write for some reason. The last two Venetrix novels were just awful. And there's really no predicting why or when or how a book is going to turn out to be something that's just really, really hard to write. I can never truly predict it. Agony books are a phenomenon, but I'm always really glad once I've done it, and especially when the feedback is as positive as I've had on this book so far, of okay, no, this is a good book. I am able to bring my skills to the table even when I'm not feeling it, even when I'm not enjoying it, and create good quality work that I'm proud of. And that there's satisfaction in that. Obviously, I'm hoping the next book will be a pure joy to write, but there's never a guarantee, and the stories still do need to be told, and it's still important, and someone out there needs your stories. So if you are in the midst of an agony book, you have all of my sympathy, but you can do it. You can persevere. You can make it through. So I'm seeing a bunch more people showing up, so I'm going to just chat another minute or so and then dive right in. So the topic this evening is, it's a big one. I made myself an outline to try to keep myself on track, and it's 14 points long, and each point has got 5 to 8 sub points, and it's it got crazy because it's a big topic and it's a really important topic, and I got a lot of ground to cover here, so I'm going to try to get through it as promptly as possible and not ramble off too much. That being said, if I kind of gloss over something and am not clear enough and you want follow-up information, don't worry about it, because I'm going to have a Q&A at the end, so you can go ahead and just, write down your question and save it for right at the end of the talk. I see Jeanette saying that she won't be able to be here. Oh, I'm sorry you won't be able to be here either, Jeanette. If, like Jeanette, you're interested in the topic and you do want to hear it, and you're going to be able to listen to it later. I'm going to post it on YouTube. It will still be here on this Facebook page, forever. I'm not planning to take it down. So you'll be able to access all of this. And if something is not covered, you can send me the question and I will use it as a topic for another video perhaps. So I'm here to help. So I'm going to go ahead and just start easing into the topic as more and more people arrive. So tonight we are talking about my debut launch, the launch of my debut novel, Daughter of Shades, book 1 of the Venetrix Chronicles, and the beginning of my career as an indie novelist, or at least as Sylvia Mercedes indie novelist. So I'm going to go through basically like what I did, what worked, what didn't work so well, a couple of the mistakes that I made, some things that like kind of sort of worked but I wouldn't necessarily do again, and just basically give you this overall picture of what this launch looked like for me. I do want to make it very, very clear that this is not necessarily a template. I'm not saying that everybody should do this. Like debut launches, book launches are honestly as individual as the authors that are, undergoing them. There's just always going to be like different motivations, different goals, different necessities, different hindrances. I mean, there's just always going to be all the different variables. So this is not me trying to tell you this is what you should do or how you should do it. I am purely here to share my experience. This is what I did. And I hope it will be really helpful for you. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of information. So hopefully you'll find something worthwhile in here as you are planning your own launch or your own relaunch, or just simply trying to like get your career like jump started again. So I'm going to dive in because again, like I said, there's a ton of stuff here. First of all, I do want to establish something though. My debut launch as Sylvia Mercedes was not my debut launch. The reality is I had 3 previous debut launches to my name. The first one was as a traditional author way back in the day. So that, that was an experience in and of itself, and it taught me some useful things, and it also taught me some really like not so useful things that I held on to much longer than I should have. And I'm sure some of you here this evening are also, I've spoken with a couple of you outside of the videos who have also had like traditional publishing background. And I'm here to tell you, and I will keep singing this song as long as you'll listen, traditional publishing and indie publishing are 2 very, very different animals. And if you have traditional publishing experience and you try to mirror that in your indie launch, 9 times out of 10, it's going to really hurt you. You could be the exception, but like most people that I know who have tried to like tailor an indie launch to look more like a traditional launch, it's not really worked out very well for them. After that traditional launch, I also did publish under that pen name as an indie. Once my traditional career crashed and burned, I thought, maybe I'll go ahead and try going indie with this same name and try to, use this as a means to finish this series. Because I was halfway through a series and, didn't get picked up for the next contract and all of that jazz. So I thought, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to try going indie. But as I said, my launch as an indie, it did not go very well, in part because I was still clinging to a lot of ideas from my traditional days. And that did not do me any favors whatsoever. I published a decent number of products as an indie under that name, but none of them were really successful. None of them were like making like anywhere near the kind of income that I wanted to see for the amount of work I was doing. Now, it would be one thing if I was just, again, like more as a hobbyist, like just putting it out there for the fun of it, but like I was working at this. Like this was, I literally was putting off having children because I was working so hard to try to get my career up and running. Like my husband and I didn't start our family for like, I think we had our first kid on our, like 2 days before our 6th anniversary. Like we did not start our family for a long time, in large part because I was really trying to get this career up and running. So I was working my tail off and making like hobby money. So something was definitely not working. So it was right around the time that I actually got pregnant with our first daughter that I went, you know what? I'm really tired of this. Like I am just beating a dead horse. Like the traditional name is long dead. I cannot get any traction as an indie under this name. I want to make a solid break. I'm going to come up with a pen name. I'm going to really like look into this indie business from a totally indie perspective. I'm not going to hold on to these traditional ideas that have been keeping me down. I want to do this, and I want to do this right, and I want to actually like make income doing this. Like I've been putting so much of my time and my life into this. Like I know I've got the talent. Now I have to figure out how. So right around the time I got pregnant with her was when I decided to do that. So it was like a lot of transitions happening at once. So all that to say, tons of research happening, much of which I'm going to be sharing with you this evening. But my third debut launch before the Sylvia launch is actually really interesting. I had a very unusual circumstance in that my mother is an award-winning novelist. And she has like, I don't even know how many titles to her name from way back in the day, but she had taken a break from publishing for a long time. She got burned out on traditional publishing, the stress, the contracts, whatever, didn't want to do it anymore. But she was interested in the idea of publishing indie. Now, she did not have any interest in like being an indie publisher. Like that did not appeal to her at all. But actually starting to write again and put out some independent work and make a little income off of her writing, that appealed to her pretty well. So I proposed to her the idea of, hey, what if you let me practice a launch on you? I'm learning all of these things about indie publishing. I'm learning all these secrets, all these techniques, and I am like in the process of writing and gearing up for my Sylvia Mercedes launch. But what if you let me practice on you? And what if we put all of these ideas to the test? And she was like, sure, go for it. She picked a new pen name. She picked a new genre that she'd never written in before, but that she was interested in writing in. We did all of the work, the like learning the like what the market, trends were, and like writing to market, covering to market, launching to market, like all of that stuff. I had the opportunity to practice on her. She just basically turned it over to me. She wrote the books, and they were amazing books. But she let me handle the whole launch. And that was a full year before I launched Sylvia. Actually, it might have been more than a year. It was like a year and a half. It was a decent chunk of time before I launched the Sylvia Mercedes pen name. And having that opportunity made a huge difference, because obviously we made some mistakes and we did some things absolutely right. And we launched her debut novel under a new pen name with no previously established market. We were able to launch her into the top 5,000 on Kindle and KU. Now that might not sound like a really high rank to any of you. Many of you have probably done better than that. But for us and for my previous indie experience, that was like, okay, that's a whole new ball game. Top 5,000, you actually start earning a little bit of real income. And especially for a totally new name, like that's a really good, solid place to launch. So that was my third launch before even like getting into this debut as Sylvia. So I just want to give you that background, because like the launch plan I'm about to like delineate for you it's very complicated, and there's so many different steps. But it wasn't like I came to this cold, like I wasn't a total novice that had never done this before and somehow miraculously just figured all of this out. So this is, nothing about this is tooting my own horn. I had practice, and I had failed, and then I had practice again. That being said, all of this information is out there. Like this is information that you can go get, and it is available. Going and getting it can be very challenging, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this video, because here you'll have, at least a chunk of it all in one convenient place. But it is all out there. It is accessible. Taking the information and implementing it is a whole different story, which, that's up to all of you. But here we go. So the first thing that I learned from my previous launches is that I needed to have very clear goals for a debut launch. Not just for publishing in general, not just for like my future as an author or whatever. I needed to have very clear set goals for what my debut launch was going to accomplish for me, or what I wanted it to accomplish for me. Now, obviously, like the number one goal is I wrote a book, I want it to be published, I want people to read it. So, yeah, that's fine. But honestly, that goal did not actually like take me anywhere with any of the previous launches. So this time I had much more specific goals, and I've written them down. So if I keep glancing away from you guys, it's because I'm checking my copious notes over here. So my two big goals for this launch were: one, establish a clear brand, so that readers will know exactly what they're getting with a Sylvia Mercedes novel, that she's going to be comparable to all of these other novelists, like the specific other novelists in my niche genre, which is kind of funny in retrospect, because like I did establish a very clear brand, but I have honestly veered away from it. My clear brand at the time was like YA adventure fantasy with romantic subplots, and now I'm very much fantasy romance. But I did actually succeed in this goal, establish a very clear brand. And then the next thing that I wanted this debut to do for me was to establish reader confidence. First being confidence that I would be like other authors that they liked. Second, that I would be quick and dependable in producing more work. So they're not going to go fall in love with me and this debut novel, and then it's months or years before they see anything more from me. So I knew this debut launch, I wanted to establish those two things: clear brand, reader confidence. So with that in mind, I'm going to walk you through, So with that in mind, I'm going to walk you through my 14 steps of what I did. So this is going to go beyond like the day of the launch. It's going to go beyond the week of the launch. In fact, it's going to go beyond even the month leading up to the launch. Like, I'm actually going to take you back a couple of years, because all of this was like, this was years in development. And the things that I did 2 to 3 years before the launch day, they were just as important as the things that I did on the actual launch day. So this is why this is such a long talk tonight. The very first thing that I did, point number one, first and most importantly, I wrote the novel. Now, I know that should be a no-brainer. Most of you, if you're here, you've written a novel and you want to sell the novel and you want people to read your novel, and that's great. But again, I had done that before and it had not actually worked out for me. So this time I wrote the right novel to accomplish my two goals. Again, establishing a brand, establishing reader confidence. So I researched the market like crazy, both before I started writing and while I was writing my debut novel. What's more, I did not write a novel. I wrote 7 novels. Again, that was because I had been studying the whole indie market, and one of the major, most important release strategies that I kept seeing popping up over and over and over again was the rapid release. Now, I've talked a little bit about rapid release in previous videos, so I don't want to get too much into that right now, but just quick recap. Rapid release is basically where you write and hoard a certain number of manuscripts, anywhere from like, I don't know, 3 to, I don't know, a dozen. And then you release them quickly. And by quickly, I mean that can be, 1 a week, it can be 1 a month, it can be 1 every 3 months. But whatever it is, it establishes a pattern of consistency so that you go from 0 to X number of novels, I'd say at least 3, very quickly in a very consistent pattern. And this goes a long way toward establishing that reader confidence, that they're not going to fall in love with you and then you're just going to disappear. Like you've immediately, with your debut series, you're establishing that confidence that they can count on you to give them more of the thing that they loved. Also, a lot of readers won't even pick you up until you've got like 3 or 4 books out. Because again, it's that confidence thing. Like, even if they haven't tried you yet, they might go, this looks great, but I only see 1. So I don't really want to try this, because what if I love it and then there's nothing more? So again, having multiple projects out very quickly And like I said, by quickly, it doesn't have to be one a week, but quickly, consistently, promptly, and to the same degree of quality. It's very, very important toward establishing your brand and establishing your name. So that's why the very first thing I did was write my series. 7 books. Now these were not long books. Like I think the longest in the series was 75,000, and that was the first one. So 75,000 words. So I mean it's a chunk of book, but it's not huge. And I think the shortest was under 60. So I mean they're not long novels, but like there are 7 of them. They're, you know, they give you that consistency. So that was the first step. Second step, however, was to make certain that what I had written was actually something that readers were going to enjoy, because I didn't want to go after all of this work. I mean, after all of the work of writing all of those stories, I didn't want to go and publish it and then like it just, you know, it didn't appeal. Again, I had done this already. I had a traditional series that appealed to a very niche market. Now that niche market was passionate and devoted, so I knew I had the ability to write stories that people loved, but I had not yet proven that I had the ability to write stories that a lot of people would love. And those are 2 very different skill sets. And again, it might not be your own personal motivation to appeal to a mass market, but I very much wanted to try to take those skills and learn how to appeal to a much broader market. In order to get that objective feedback, the next thing that I did once I had a first draft of Daughter of Shades, this was not the first draft, but I had a really strong draft of Daughter of Shades, was I went and published it on Wattpad in increments, chapter increments every couple of days. So this actually was a really interesting experience for me, because, you know, Wattpad is just, I mean, it's so huge, and there are so many, like just so many different kinds of readers there, and even just being seen on Wattpad is a challenge. And people on Wattpad can be awesome or they can be brutal, but you want both. Like you want both of those readers to find you when you're posting an experiment like this, trying to really get that feedback. And I found some like true fans who are still reading my work today, and I found some true friends too. One gal, she went by the name Ariel. Her name is Hannah, but she went by the name Ariel back then. She's actually a buddy of mine now, and like, you know, I'm cheering her on as she's gearing up for her own, you know, launch one of these days soon. And she gave me some just fantastic feedback. Total stranger at the time, but like gave me some fantastic feedback of, okay, these are the things that are working. These are the chapters that are definitely getting that strong read through. And okay, these are the places where I may be getting a little too wordy or lost in world building or whatever. But the great thing with Wattpad was that you get comments like in real time. Like people can leave comments in the text as they're reading. So you can go back through and see these are the parts that are getting comments, and you can see exactly where, you know, reader interest is dropping off. You can see a lot of things. So like bear in mind, if you publish on KU, you cannot leave work up on Wattpad. I had to delete all of that before I published, but it was very, very useful. So I got a ton of feedback, very objective, some of it really blunt and a little hard to take, but I made a point to use all of it, because again, I had experience writing just for myself and then it not working. This time I really, really wanted to hit what the market was looking for. So I used all of it. I mean, if somebody said this part's boring, I trimmed it up real good. If somebody said your world building is losing me, trimmed it down real good. Like I changed my title based on reader feedback. I changed a number of things like based on reader feedback on Wattpad. So that was a really useful step toward like gearing up for my launch, was finding a source of objective feedback. And I definitely recommend it for anybody else out there. Like I know one writer who, like Anna, I see she's here this evening. She's been publishing work on Kindle Vella, which I think is also a fantastic way to get that objective reader feedback. Like she's planning to eventually publish these books on Kindle and KU, but right now she's like publishing them in serialized increments on Vella. And again, like you can see immediately, like where the read through is happening, where you're losing readers, and you can start, making adjustments and tightening up your work and, all of those things according to that feedback. So, I mean, I think that's just brilliant. And yet another reason why all of you should be watching Anastasis Blythe as she's gearing up for her launch, because she's doing a lot of the things, and I think she's going to be big. So anyway, that was another big important step. The next thing, so while I'm doing that, while I am getting that feedback, and while I am like developing, still finishing developing the story, I started looking into cover design, because that is a huge, huge important factor toward a successful launch. Now, again, I've already talked about cover design before, so I don't want to get, too deep into that right now. But I do want to actually at least touch on this, because it was so important to my launch to have the right covers. The first thing I want to say about cover design was I did not go with the first couple of designers that attracted me. I didn't go with a designer that I was looking at and going, oh my gosh, their work is so beautiful. That's the cover I want to see on my books. And I mean, there were a number of them, and some pretty pricey ones, and I go and look at their portfolio sometimes, and it's like, oh, they're so pretty. I did not go with those designers. What I did instead was I went and started looking at designers that were selling in my genre. Now, the big name in my genre that I admired was Elise Kova, but Elise Kova was already getting really beautiful, fine art illustration style covers on hers, and I knew for a debut series, I didn't have the budget for that. But around that same time, there were a number of authors who were working with all the same designer. There was Jordan Rivet and Alex Liddell and gosh, I'm blanking on some names. Oh, Rachel E. Carter. She was huge at that time. She's kind of disappeared off the scene since her series, but she had a series called Black Mage that was really popular at the time. And, sorry, Kitty just came wandering in and distracted me. But anyway, so yeah, a number of big popular names in the indie fantasy market were all using the same designer, which was Deranged Doctor Designs. And I'm not going to lie, when I first went and was looking at their portfolio, I didn't really like it that much. It's the photo manip style, which, it can just be kind of an iffy style. It really can. It can either really work if you've got the right artist, or it can be really a little janky. And I didn't love 100% of their portfolio, but I was seeing their work consistently selling with the big names in the market. So they're the ones that I contacted. And I'm also, I'll be the first to say, I really loved the covers they came up with for me. It's hard to even imagine the Venatrix Chronicles with different covers on them now. I had to work, pretty hard back and forth with them to get what I wanted, but they did work with me. They were super professional. They're a great company to work with. And again, they've done some of the big names in fantasy. Lindsay Baroker works with them. They know their stuff. So all that to say, I didn't go necessarily with the designer that I wanted. I went with the designer that I could objectively see working. And I still recommend that policy when looking into getting a cover done. So anyway, the next thing I'm going to try to cover very, very quickly, because I have talked about this before as well, but it's another really important step toward my launch. Again, while I was getting that feedback and while I was getting these covers designed, all of that's happening in the background. The other thing that I started doing, and this was 2 years before my launch, I started establishing my pen name as an entity, as a presence in the, just the reader and writer, world. Not so much the writer world, because I technically wasn't a writer yet, not as Sylvia Mercedes. Sylvia Mercedes was a total novice and had not done this yet. And I wasn't making it public at that time that Sylvia Mercedes had other publishing experience, for reasons that I've covered in other videos, so I won't go into now. But, so Sylvia Mercedes, basically she didn't exist, but I wanted to make certain that she actually was a name and had at least some sort of foothold of existence in the world before trying to publish. So the first thing I did, and again, this was 2 years before actually launching, I set up an email address. I set up a Goodreads account and profile as a reader. And then I started like going through all of the hot indie books at the time and finding the readers who were giving them the top reviews. Like, so these are the readers who obviously they read and love and support indie fantasy authors. So I started finding those readers and friending them, and I friended several hundred of them. So just very simple low-level networking, started leaving comments on their reviews and started just like making myself a presence. I also started reviewing those books myself, reading and reviewing those books myself. This also was a really great way to help me like see what the top names were in the indie market at the time. Like I discovered people who, well, and also not even just the top names, like the up and coming names. Like I discovered Alicia Klafiki this way. She didn't even have a book out yet. I saw her debut launch. Like I saw it starting to be talked about on Goodreads like a week or two before it launched. So like that was great. So I was able to like discover her, read her, feature her before she was even an actual like established name yet. I think I found Claire Luana this way. She's an established name. She just had a great book, The Wish Eater, that just came out. You may have seen it around on Instagram. I think Claire Sager I found this way. So yeah, it was a really great way for me just to become aware of what was going on in the genre as well. I set up a website to like review and feature these books. I started doing author of the month features in order to like get myself established like with the authors themselves. Like I would reach out to them, invite them to come do interviews. So basically like just made Sylvia an entity and then got her established, got her a presence in the market. And when I say got her a presence, I also want to be very clear that like her presence was a giving presence. Like she was there to give. She was there to give interviews to authors and to offer giveaways to her readers and to, you know, offer promo and like whatever. Like she was there to give. Because ultimately that's also going to be the job of, you know, the author too. Like you might very easily start thinking as an author, no, my job is to like get people to buy my book. But the truth is that's not your job. The job of the author is to give readers stories that they want. You know, and then the lovely flip side of that is they will then pay money for you to keep doing that. But really your job is a job of giving. Like your job is to know your reader and to give them what they're looking for. And that was something I did not understand back in my traditional days. I still had this mindset that my job was to write the stories that I wanted to write, and then the readers would come to me. And I had a very like taking sort of mindset. It wasn't a giving sort of mindset. And that was something I had to learn to like really, really 180 on. So anyway, all that to say, give. It's very, very important. And the sooner you can start doing that, the better it's going to be for when you're actually launching your product. Okay, so that's all the like couple of years leading up to the launch. I'm now going to jump to about 4 months out. And then, you know, we'll start really zeroing in on the month before, the week before, all of that stuff. So now we're going to jump to about 4 months out after I had done all of those other things. So at 4 months out, I started really working to build my newsletter. Now, I already had a very low-level newsletter established just as a reader, where I had like, you know, I built up like maybe 50, 60 subscribers. I mean, it was tiny, just for my reader newsletter in which I featured, you know, other authors basically. And it worked. It was a nice little place to start. But my goal was to have a newsletter of 2,000 subscribers before launching. Now, the reason for this, most of you probably already know this, but I'm just going to cover it anyway, just in case somebody out there has not like run across this information yet. Your newsletter is the most important tool in your indie author arsenal. Like it really is so important, because that is your direct contact to your readers. And the more readers you've got, the more emails you've got, the more names you've got of people who are interested in you and your work and what you're doing and your genre, I mean, just the better it is for you, because you will always be able to send out a newsletter and contact that reader and let them know, hey, I have something else for you. Would you like this? Hey, I've got a promo for you. Would you like this? You're always going to be able to get in contact with them. Now, I mean, obviously, like, there's lots of different, like, email servers out there, and there's open rates, and there's, like, all of that jazz that can make it very challenging. Having a nice list of 10,000 subscribers does not necessarily mean that you are reaching 10,000 subscribers, and that's a whole different issue. But having that established newsletter is so important, and I had learned that from my previous launch experiences. I knew that, okay, this is really something I need. So my goal was 2,000 subscribers. So with that in mind, I created what I call a newsletter grab. I don't know if that's a common term. I don't know if that's what everybody calls these, but I call it my newsletter grab novel. It was a short novel, a prequel to the Benetrix Chronicles, but a complete novel in its own right. And the funny thing is, like, I wrote it after having written the Benetrix Chronicles, and as a result, I was just that much more confident and experienced by the time I wrote it. So it might actually be my favorite thing from that whole series. Like, I really loved that book. It turned out really well. So I also got a professional cover done by the same artist in the same brand, the same style, got that whole thing, like, just the way I wanted it. And at 4 months before launching Daughter of Shades, I launched this newsletter grab. Now, this book is not available for sale anywhere. This is only available to my newsletter subscribers. So the first task, of course, was actually getting people to see it, and therefore to know that if they wanted this book, they needed to subscribe to my newsletter and just start that ball rolling. So what I did was I ran Facebook ads for the newsletter grab book, and I actually put a decent chunk of marketing budget into those Facebook ads because I knew how important this newsletter was going to be. I had set up a MailChimp newsletter, and I still use MailChimp. And I know some people really hate MailChimp, but I'm honestly lazy, and it's the one I set up with to start with, and so I've never bothered to change. And the main reason I started MailChimp, honestly, was because Mark Dawson uses it, and I was at the time following like Mark Dawson's self-publishing formula class and all of those things, and so he used MailChimp, so I used MailChimp. That's what I used. The other interesting thing with MailChimp is, at least at that time, I don't know if it's still true, but at that time, you could integrate it with your Facebook ads. So that, you could literally run a Facebook ad that you clicked the button and it just took you right to the page, and they would just put in their email address, and it would just start the ball rolling for them to receive their book, and you had the name and you could see, all the information. I have not run Facebook ads for a newsletter grab book in a long time, so I honestly don't know if that still works. And I also know that you don't have to have MailChimp in order to run Facebook ads. Like, there are workarounds you can do, even if the service you're using doesn't have that direct integration. There's still plenty of workarounds. But all that being said, the newsletter was so important, so I set aside a decent chunk. We're talking a couple $1,000s in ad budget to really promote that newsletter grab book. So this is the first of the things. I'm going to ask the question at the end of a lot of these things of, would I do it again? And in this case, yes, I would do it again. Like, it was so important. That newsletter was so important. I would absolutely do it again. I recommend it to other people as well. There are other ways of building your newsletter that aren't as pricey as running Facebook ads, but this was just a really nice, clear cut. I could target the people that I wanted. I will say one big mistake that I made, because I was still relatively new to running Facebook ads, was in targeting. I targeted like a lot of different just English speaking countries, because I figured if they're an English speaking country, they're going to have Kindle and they're going to read these books. I did not realize that there are some English speaking parts of the world that just don't have access to like Kindle. Like they don't, like they read on other platforms, like Nook or whatever. So they were getting my newsletter book, but they were not able to actually buy my book once I launched it. Thankfully I found that out like before launch, so I was able to pivot. But yeah, I wasted a decent chunk of ad budget advertising to people who literally were not going to be able to buy my product because I was, publishing exclusively to Kindle and KU. So that was a bummer. These days, honestly, like I was so scarred from that experience that I really only target US Facebook ads. Like I know I should expand further and target UK and, Australia and all of you lovely readers who live in different parts of the world. But I was just so scarred from that experience. So, yeah, I only target US. Eventually I'll get brave enough to, go broader again. But I lost a lot of money that way. So don't be me. Be careful where you're targeting. Make certain that they can buy your books once the books are currently actually available. So anyway, Facebook ads to build the newsletter, absolutely recommend. I did this for 4 months up until the launch, and I did reach my 2,000 goal. Now, having 2,000 subscribers, again, does not necessarily mean you have 2,000 openers, but it was a, solid enough chunk of my subscribers were opening my newsletters at that point. Also at that point, like I started sending out my newsletters 3 times a month. Up until then, I had my little low level newsletter that I sent out maybe twice a month, maybe once a month. I don't remember exactly. It's getting to be a while ago. But once I started building up my subscriber base, I also started like increasing my consistency. So I established the pattern of always sending out on the 1st, 10th, and 20th of each month, regardless of the day of the week. It's probably not the best pattern because I know there are certain days of the week when people open more, but it's now my habit, so that's just what I do. The 1st, 10th, and 20th of each month, that's when you're going to get an email from me. So I started increasing, and like hitting those dates like regularly in the 4 months leading up to launch, because again, I also wanted to be training those readers to expect emails from me and to open emails from me. And the more they open, the more like Gmail will actually or whatever email service they use will actually show them my emails. So I wanted to be certain that by the time I actually sent them the email that mattered, i.e. please go buy my book, I wanted to be certain that they were consistently receiving and opening my newsletter. So anyway, 4 months in advance, that's what I was doing. I also started doing some other things to build newsletters. I won't go into that too very much, but I did some author collaboration, promos and giveaways and things like that, which were great. They were very useful because they also helped me to, establish a presence with more of the other indie authors. So that down the road, when I reached out to ask for newsletter swaps and things like that, I wasn't just coming totally out of the blue as this total novice. They already had interaction with me from previous experiences. So those were really valuable, but I won't go into all of that here because, you're here for the launch, not for networking tips. So here we go. So now we're coming to 1 month out. This is where it really starts to matter here. So at 1 month out, I put my debut novel, Daughter of Shades, up for pre-order at 99 cents. Now, there are a lot of theories about pre-orders and a lot of pros and cons to pre-orders. Now, you'd think just on the face of it that having your book up for pre-order and getting those early sales is a good idea. Technically, it actually can really harm a launch, and I knew this when I did it. But I chose to anyway for other reasons. But I'm going to try to explain to you why this can harm a launch. Some of you, again, probably already know this, but for those of you who don't, so the Amazon algorithm is generally going to be triggered best in your favor if after the day of launching, not pre-order, but the day you launch, if you can show staggered uphill sales. So if your debut launch day is your biggest sales day, the algorithm tends to see that as kind of a blip. It sees it as a fluke. It doesn't see it as a trend. Whereas if you can actually stagger your launch over the course of 7 to 10 days, so that you're, around your 7th day is your biggest day, that's gonna trigger the algorithm much more in your favor. It's gonna see that, oh, this is a product that people want and continue to want and now want more. So it's better if you can do that. But the problem is, if you've been accumulating pre-orders, now not all of your pre-orders will count towards your sales on that launch day. I think it's like a third of them count towards your sales, and the rest of them just don't count towards your sales. They don't count towards your rate. You still get the money, obviously, but like they don't count towards your sales on the actual launch day. But if let's say you've accumulated like 100 pre-orders and 35 of them count on the day of your launch, and you're a debut novelist, like you don't have an established audience, you don't have, a footprint yet, can you guarantee that you're going to be able to sell more than 35 books every day leading up to whatever your high point day is? Like, that's not something you can easily guarantee. In fact, it's really, really hard to do. It's hard to do even as an established novelist. So there's definitely some reasons to not do a pre-order for a debut book. Why I chose to do it? Well, for one thing, I had my newsletter, and I could see how well the newsletter was already growing. So I believed and trusted in my ability to actually create a staggered launch, even with the pre-order numbers that I was starting to get. Also, as a total debut, I wasn't expecting really big pre-order numbers. And honestly, I don't remember how many I got. I think I got around 400, which was great. Again, it was a 99-cent book. But it wasn't like a tremendous number of pre-orders. It was a good number of pre-orders, but it wasn't like huge. So I trusted in my ability, because I had a newsletter audience that was opening. I trusted my ability to actually get them to buy on day 5 or 7. I forget which one I sent it out on. So that's the other thing. And I'll get to that again later. I didn't send out a newsletter the day of the launch. I held on to that. That was a secret. I also did not tell my newsletter about the pre-order because I wanted to use them as my secret weapon on the actual launch week. I didn't tell my newsletter that the pre-order was up. So the pre-order was out there and it was accumulating some sales. And it was slowly triggering the algorithm to know, oh, she could go in these also bots because the people who bought this also bought this. So that was useful, but I didn't actually push it. I also chose to put it at 99 cents. And I know there are people out there who definitely feel like 99 cents is not a good idea anymore, because you don't want to train your readers to only buy cheap books from you, or to wait for the sales or wait for the free days or wait for the 99-cent days. You want to curate a readership of actual buyers. And I 100% agree with this. That being said, as a total debut, again, I have to break down that barrier of trust. Technically, I'm still a risk to a reader. They don't know if I'm going to follow through. They don't know if they're going to like my work. They don't know if I'm going to keep writing work that they're liking. I'm a total risk. I'm a total enigma. So if I set my price point at 99 cents, that's at least one barrier that I have the control to break down in advance. 99 cents, she might be worth the risk. So I don't set books at 99 cents for pre-orders anymore now that I'm established, now that I've got so many books to my name now, and a reader who's never seen me before, it doesn't take a heck of a lot of effort for them to go and see, oh, she's got nearly 20 books to her backlist now, and they've got hundreds of ratings each, and generally good averages, and okay, she's got some street cred now, so she's not as much of a risk even at $4.99 or $5.99. She's an established name. I'm willing to take a risk on her. But as a debut, I didn't have any credibility yet. So 99 cent, that was, that made sense to me. The other reason that I put a book up for pre-order was so that I could start running some ads, toward it, like low-level ads, so that they could ramp up over time before the actual launch day. B, so that I could schedule some paid newsletter features, and I'm going to get into that. But a lot of the newsletter features out there, I think most of them, you can't actually secure a feature day if you don't have a book that's already up for sale. So if you're gonna pay for a newsletter feature, you do have to put a book up for pre-order. But I'll get to that in a minute. So 1 month out, that was the big task. I put the book up for 99-cent pre-order, and around that time as well, I sent out ARCs. So ARCs are, as if you don't know, ARCs stand for Advanced Reader Copies. So I sent out, I think, 200 Advanced Reader Copies to my newsletter. So what I did with the debut, these days I don't do this, but with my debut book, I basically sent a free copy of the book to anybody who wanted it off of my newsletter. So yes, that means that I wasn't getting those sales anymore from those people. But again, I knew that I needed reviews right away, because that is, again, one of the biggest, most important ways that you can gain credibility with an audience, a vast audience out there who they don't know you exist yet. I needed to get reviews right away. Now, I knew that the vast majority of the readers that I sent ARCs to were not going to actually follow through and review. So I was basically playing an averages game of, okay, I will send out advanced review copies to anyone who wants it, hoping that at least a quarter of them will actually take the time to write a review. My goal for my launch week was 20 reviews, because I felt like if I could get 20 reviews, that was just enough credibility for a debut author that more people would actually be willing to take a chance on me. And I think that's just about what I got. I think I sent out 200 copies and I got 25 reviews in that first week. And I was like, yes! It was a huge success for me, because again, I'm a total no-name yet, so I can't expect much better than that. Technically it worked. So I sent out 200 review copies. Here's the other clincher. You can't actually officially give a book in exchange for a review. Officially, you can't solicit reviews. So that's kind of a shady area. So if any of you follow my newsletter when I'm sending out ARCs, you'll notice that I never use the language of, I will give you this if you will give me a review. What I do is I say, only people who have, send me a link to your Amazon review. These days, for an Amazon review on a Sylvia Mercedes book, or sometimes a specific Sylvia Mercedes book, or if it's a brand new series, I'll just say, send me a link to basically any Amazon review, to prove, and this is just to prove that you write reviews on Amazon. That's it. But I never say, I will give this to you in exchange for one of those reviews. All I ask is that they prove that they do write them. And then when I send them the ARC, I ask them to please consider reviewing mine. Having already established that these are people who do review, this is part of their habit pattern, they read a book, they review it. Having established that they are people who do review, I then ask them to consider reviewing mine. But they are not obligated to. Officially, they are not receiving ARCs from me in exchange for a review. Now, I can also make a decision, if reviewers don't actually post a review, I'm not obliged to keep giving them ARCs, especially if over time, they keep getting ARCs from me and they keep not posting reviews. I don't owe them free copies of my work. But if they do consistently review, I'm also happy to consistently give. But it's very much a, I don't owe them anything, but I give them in hope that they will consider. So anyway, with that in mind, again, I sent out 200 copies, and I used the same wording when I sent out those copies. I did not specifically ask for Amazon reviewers then. just simply because I was, again, playing the averages. I'm like, you know what, if they review on Goodreads or Facebook, or even if they just happen to mention to their neighbor that they read this interesting book at this stage where I'm just trying to, like, again, establish a brand and, build, reader confidence. Those are my two goals. I'm not trying to make money off of this one. Establish a brand, instill some confidence in my readers. Basically, I'm winning as long as they actually read the darn thing. So I sent out that many. I also, I think I went on the Facebook group YA Book Stop, which is a reader review group where you can actually post your books in, and people will sign up to review it. So if you guys are looking for ways to get reviewers and your newsletters are just not like cutting it, I do recommend look up YA Book Stop on Facebook. I haven't used them in a long time. I honestly haven't needed to in a long time. Oops, sorry. I haven't needed to in a long time, but they were useful. I got a handful of reviewers that way as well. And generally you can trust the reviewers there to come through for you. So, a big question that a lot of people have asked me about this strategy, again, is are you compromising sales by giving out so many free books? In my case, I really wasn't, in part because A, I wasn't expecting to make money, B, it was a 7-book series. So I knew I already had 6 more books that I was ready to release very quickly after this one came out. So I was prepared, in a big way prepared, to take a loss on this one because I knew I could make it up later. And I also knew it might be much later. So I was prepared to take a loss for a while and sink a lot of money and a lot of effort into the first several books. And the truth is, I didn't start making money on this series until books like 5 or 6. But I accomplished my specific goals. And as a result of that, I was able to build my career to a very healthy place very quickly, much faster than I otherwise would have. So again, keep in mind your goals when you're making these decisions. So while I was also getting these review copies sent out, this was also when I went and started figuring out my early promos. Again, this is the month before the launch. So this is where the money started happening. I had spent a little bit of money, obviously, in getting the covers designed. But honestly, Deranged Doctor were so reasonable in their prices that it really wasn't a whole lot. But, and then I'd started spending money with the Facebook ads. Like I said, I spent a couple $1,000s with the Facebook ads for the newsletter grab. But this is where I started really, ramping up the money. So now that I had a book up for pre-order, I decided to start a couple of AMS, those are Amazon advertising ads. This was very much so that I could start getting seen in Also Bots and start having my book cover show up on the product pages of the specific authors in my genre that I want to mimic, that I want those readers who are loving those books to come and buy my work. So I started doing some low-level AMS ads. Now, the thing with AMS ads, if you haven't run them yet, they often take a little bit of time to kick in and really start working, and some of them never kick in and never start working. Now, this is not a talk on ads. I'm not going to go into a lot of details here, but I will say, if you need an ad to be working by your launch week, you probably want to start it a week or 2 before that date. Because it just takes some time for it to get going, and it gives you time also to refine the ad and get it to the level that you want it working. So I started my AMS ads a month out for my 99-cent book. I targeted indie authors pretty much exclusively. I didn't really target traditional because I already knew I didn't want to dilute the waters. I really wanted to pinpoint my audience, which were indie readers and indie authors. So I don't remember specifically what I spent per day on these ads because, again, it's been a little while. But I'm pretty sure it was somewhere in the range of $20 to $40 a day. So that adds up pretty quickly. And the first week or so I spent higher than that because you often have to set a really high per day spend to get an ad triggered and get it alive and get it moving. You can usually tell within 3 or 4 days if an ad is gonna live or not, like if it's going to be served or not. And if it's not working, cut it off, build a new one. My ads, I always targeted author names and titles. I didn't really target a lot of other like keywords. I mean, you can, but I didn't. So this is another time where I have to ask, like, would I do it again? Yes, I would absolutely do this again. Not because of the actual pre-order sales, though those are important. The little bits of pre-order sales that I was getting, though they were teaching the algorithm. It wasn't so much about making money, because again, it's a 99-cent book. I wasn't making money, wasn't expecting to make money. I was losing money. But that wasn't the point. The point was to trigger the algorithm and make 100% certain that Daughter of Shades was showing up on the Air Awakens product page, that Daughter of Shades was showing up on Waters of Salt and Sin, that Daughter of Shades was showing up on, I mean, I don't even know what all the titles were at the time, like Jordan Rivett's series and like some of the other like really popular series at that time. I also had a really interesting thing happen during my launch, which again, like, this is why launches are not always replicable, because like sometimes like random things happen that you can't predict. But I was really fortunate in that this author, this lovely, wonderful person named Audrey Gray, she published a book called Oath Taker, literally 1 month before Daughter of Shades came out. And it blew up. It was a huge hit that at that time. Like, I mean, she easily hit the top 1,000 with this. I mean, it wasn't her debut. I think it was like 3 or 4 books in for her, but it was her first big hit. And it was very much the same sort of thing. If you look at the covers, you can see how it's very comparable to Daughter of Shades. I mean, it's like, you know, a tough looking gal and this like armor with her hair blowing and like weapons. Really cool font. And then like you read the product description and it's like there's a lot of similarities, like she's, you know, in service to a prince, but he's not her love interest. Well, that sounded kind of familiar. Like she had like, I think there were shades as part of the storyline. They were nothing like my shades. I'm pretty sure shades was like the word she used in place of like vampires or in place of fae. So nothing like the shades in my Daughter of Shades. But this book was very, very popular. And then I follow up literally a month later with a book called Daughter of Shades. So even though my shades were a very different kind of shades, it's like, well, that's pretty useful targeting right there. So I'm watching her be a huge hit, and I wanted to be absolutely certain my book was showing up in her also bots, and my book was showing up in her, you know, just in her sponsored ads, so that people who were like absolutely dying and like falling over themselves to buy her book at least saw that mine existed. So 100% would do AMS ads again, because it did work. My book never like blew up to the degree that hers did, but again, it didn't have to, because I had a 7-book series. I was able to get my name established. I was able to get my foothold. I didn't have to be a huge hit. It's kind of the same thing I talked about in my last video about, you know, Elise Kova publishing a deal with the Elf King a few months before I brought out the Moonfire Bride. The Moonfire Bride was never going to be as big of a hit as Elf King. It still isn't. Couldn't be. Hers is like, I still can't believe how well that book sells. It's incredible. I mean, it's an incredible book, so that probably helps, but I mean, it's such a huge success. You rarely see that in the indie market. But again, I didn't have to actually replicate that level of success. I was able to like kind of like ride the coattails a little bit, because all of those readers, they can only read her book once and then they're looking for the next thing. And I'm like, well, I'm over here. You might like me. Hello. So it works. Targeted advertising, it's a beautiful thing. So moving on though. So AMS ads, that was great. I also during this time started doing some BookBub ads to my pre-order book. So I don't know if many of you are like subscribed to BookBub or not. The BookBub is basically it's a paid email service. Well, like the subscribers don't pay to be on it. I don't think they do. No, they don't. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that they're paid to be on it. But like authors who want to be featured on this service, they have to pay in order to be featured. And BookBub is really the big one. There are a lot of these services out there, but BookBub is the big one. Like authors will pay several $100s per book just to get their books featured. And like almost all of us are like, we're trying, like we put in our BookBub. Okay, yes, Celeste is telling me that subscribing to them is free. Thank you. But yeah, we're paying several $100s to try to get our books featured on BookBub, and like most of us don't get selected. I've tried so many times. It's been years since the last time I had a BookBub deal. It's okay. I've gotten over it. I've moved on. But you can also pay to have ads shown. So like they have their featured books, and then down at the bottom, like there's paid advertising space. So I tried that out. I think I did like $50 per ad. I targeted both indie and trad, and then I even did combos of both, like 3 different ads to different targets. Would I do it again? Probably not. I really didn't see. It's hard, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say which things actually move the needle for you because, you know, sometimes readers have to see, I think like the rule of thumb is like 7 touches. Like a reader has to see your product 7 times before they're finally going to be moved to buy it. And you never know where those 7, you know, interactions basically are going to happen. So theoretically, BookBub could have been, you know, one of those 7 for any number of readers and led to them buying eventually. But as far as like directly seeing any benefit from BookBub, I didn't see it. So it's been a very long time since I used BookBub ads. I didn't put a ton of money into it. I think I did, like I said, $150, just experimental, just to kind of see what would happen. And you know, it wasn't great. So I wouldn't do it again. Personally, I might experiment with it someday, but like for a debut launch, you can put your money to better use other places. So now I'm going to kind of bring us forward a little bit closer because we're in the ad space. I'm going to keep talking about ads. So I'm going to bring us a little closer to the actual launch. So, you know what? Actually, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to loop back to this just simply because it pertains to other things too. So while these ads are going on, the AMS and the BookBub ads are going on, about, I want to say a week before the actual launch, I put book 2 up for pre-order. Now I did this for 2 reasons. One was so that I could put a buy link in the back matter of book 1. I wanted to be certain that people, as soon as they got to the end of book 1, they would immediately see a little ad and a buy button for book 2, so that I could prove to them, like, we can just keep this ball rolling. Like, I'm going to have more product for you. It's coming imminently. Buy it now. So I had to have the pre-order link up in order to have a link to put in the formatting for the book 1 before I launched it. So I had to put it up. Also, it did increase my visibility just a little bit more because, again, I'm going from 0, you know, to trying to be an established author. Having another book up there was a good way to do that. So it helped a little bit. I even at that time did run a few AMS ads to book 2. Now, generally that's not a great idea when you have a continuous series like mine where you have to read book 1 before you can read book 2, because, I mean, you don't want to confuse readers. But I went ahead and ran a few just low-level AMS ads to book 2 just for the purpose of increasing my visibility. Again, keeping in mind that my goal at that time was not so much making money, it was visibility. So I continued to run AMS ads to, I think, the first 3 books in the series before I finally cut and started just putting all, maybe it was even the first 4. It might have been the first 4 before I finally cut and just started putting all of the ad budget into book 1, which is, you know, what I would generally recommend. But it wasn't necessarily a bad. In fact, I'd say it was actually it was a good strategy. It increased my visibility just that much more. And I didn't have to spend a ton of money to do it, just a little bit more money in order to just make people more aware of my product. So anyway, put book 2 up for pre-order, important feature. Now I'm going to, and then at this time as well, during this month, this was when I started going ahead and setting myself up with the paid newsletter features. So like I said, BookBub is one that, like, Maybe if you offer your arm, a leg, and a firstborn child, you'll get into BookBub. But if you just want to pay regular money, there are other paid newsletter features out there that you can use. So the ones that I used for Daughter of Shades, I went and started applying for them and getting on their schedule in the month before the release, but scheduled as many of them as possible for the week of the release, and then a few of them just for the month of the release. But mostly I try to fit these into the week of the release because, again, I'm trying to create a staggered line of sales to trigger the algorithm over the first 7 days of the launch. So the ones that I used I've got a list right here: Bargain Booksy, Book Raid, Buck Books, and The Fussy Librarian. I don't think it doesn't look like I used Book Barbarian or Book Gorilla. It may be that you had to have already published books for those, or that they were, at the time only looking for free books. I'm not sure. But these are the ones that I used because they, you could set up, with them just with a pre-order book. Some of them also have review requirements where you have to have a certain number of reviews before they'll feature your work. So none of these had those requirements, which is probably why I used them. Would I use them again? Would I recommend them? I don't know. That's kind of a hard question for me to answer because I never use them now. I truly never use these things for any of my launches now. And I couldn't honestly say at the time that I saw any big spikes in sales, because I was watching pretty closely during that week of that launch. And anytime I had one of these features, I was watching to see a spike. And I can't honestly say that I saw a spike, but it's one of those things where, and I could, they give you a tally of the click-through rates and things like that, and the click-through rates weren't bad or anything. They did fine. But would I do them again? I don't know. It's one of those things where it's I would hate to say not to use them because they might make a big difference for you, but I don't bother with them now. A, because I'm lazy and who's got time for that? B, I'm cheap. I don't want to spend money on something that I can't actively see working in my favor. So, I don't know. I'm on the fence over whether or not I'd recommend them. Some authors totally swear by them though. So don't necessarily listen to me. So anyway, now I'm going to come back a little bit in my notes to 5 days before the launch, because this is where I started using Facebook ads. So I'm saying it was 5 days before the launch. That's technically not true. So with my launch, I had 2 launch days. I had the soft launch, which was when the book actually launched on Amazon and went from being a pre-order to being available for sale. And I had the hard launch. And the hard launch was when that was the day I considered the launch day. That was the day when I really started pushing my promotions and ad budgets. I amped up my ad budgets in all the platforms. And that was the day when I sent out my newsletter. And that day was either 5 or 7 days after the soft launch. So the soft launch, when the book actually truly launched, I kept really quiet. Again, I didn't send out a newsletter. There weren't any big, songs and dances on social media, nothing like that. I kept it really quiet. Because I already had that nice chunk of pre-orders that were counting, and I didn't want to push that number any higher and affect my chances of getting that nice staggered launch. So the soft launch day, the actual launch day that it was, I kept really quiet, but I did start my first Facebook ad. So I set up Facebook ads to run through those 5 to 7 days before the hard launch, and then I think 10 days after. So, it was a decent chunk of days. It was 17 days of Facebook ads. And what I did was on the soft launch day, because again, I wanted to create a staggered effect, I set up 5 different ads at targeting slightly different audiences with slightly different, images and slightly different blurbs. Just so I don't think at that time they didn't have the option, which Facebook now has, of you can set up one ad and have a bunch of different images and a bunch of different blurbs, and they'll just kind of combine them for you. I don't think they had that option at that time. So I set up 5 different ads with 5 different images and 5 different blurbs targeted at slightly different targeting groups. And I started the first one pretty low level the day of the soft launch, and then progressively added a new ad at a higher budget until the hard launch day. And so the hard launch day was the day when I had the highest budget going. I think at that time, the most expensive ads I ran, I had one Facebook ad that was running at $100 a day. I only ran that ad for 2 days because I just didn't have the budget to go more than that. But that $200, that $100 a day ad, I ran the hard launch day and the day after to really try to drive it home. One of those Facebook ads I targeted specifically to my newsletter. So I got all of those emails and I plugged those into Facebook, and I generated an audience that was just my newsletter subscribers. So one of the ads was targeted to them. The others were targeted much more broadly, targeting like Throne of Glass and Sarah J. Maas and like all the big hot names in traditional publishing. Sadly, there's really none of the big indie names in our genre are available to be targeted in Facebook ads, but there's lots of traditional ones. So that was what I went with. So that was one of my biggest, most important tools for creating that staggered effect on my launch. And would I do it again? Absolutely. Facebook, if you can learn how to use that platform well, and there's classes and things you can take on this. It's a very powerful tool. I will say it is at its most powerful when you are at your most targeted. It's really, really hard to sell anything on any platform if you don't have something that people want. But if you've got a nice targeted product that people are intrigued by, and you've got ad copy that is making it very clear that this is why they're going to enjoy reading your work, Facebook is a very powerful tool. I found it to be extremely effective. And I'll be honest, Benetrix is not as targeted of a product as what I do now. I thought it was at the time, but it's not as targeted of a product as what I do now. And it's still this tool was just invaluable. It made all the difference. But again, also keeping in mind, oh dear, I hope you guys can still hear me. It's starting to rain very hard. I might bring the phone a little closer to my face so you can hear me. Keeping in mind again that my goal with this launch, with this debut launch, was not to make money. So when I say it was really effective, I mean it was really effective for getting my name out there, getting my brand established, getting my series founded. It was not a matter of, I was making a really good turnaround. I wasn't making a good, it wasn't necessarily fantastic conversion rates or anything like that. But because again, that wasn't my goal with this. So again, before you go throwing a ton of money at, thank you, Celeste, I appreciate that. Before you go throwing a ton of money at Facebook, again, be clear with what your goals are. So anyway, so that was that. Let me scroll on over here. I'm actually getting near the end of this. So again, the newsletter I did not send out until the hard launch day. That was 5 to 7 days after the soft launch. I don't remember exactly. What I do remember is that the day before I sent this newsletter out was the day I found out I was pregnant with my second child. So that felt very full circle, because literally it was when I got pregnant with my first that I decided I'm going to make a break. I'm going to establish a new pen name. I'm going to, this is what I'm going to do. 3 years later, I was actually on the verge of truly launching the Sylvia name and found out I was pregnant with my second. I'm like, oh, okay, this is good timing. And I feel like I've been pregnant for most of my career. No more. After the twins, we're definitely done. But yeah, anyway, just fun little random tidbit there. Anyway, so yeah, I held on to the newsletter, didn't let them know about the pre-order, did not let them know about the soft launch, held on to it for 5 to 7 days, then sent it out. And of course it was a 99-cent sale, so that makes it that much more compelling. So here's another little trick that I did that I will leave you guys with. Yes, I'd left it on 99 cents for that whole pre-order. When I sent it out to my newsletter, I told them it's only going to be 99 cents for 10 days, which was the truth. after those 10 days, I bumped it up to $4.99 for like a week, and then I bumped it back down to 99 cents and I left it there. Because like the sales were dropping really bad, and I knew that, again, I wanted to keep things going. But I absolutely wanted to create a sense of exclusivity for my newsletter of, it's 99 cents, get it now. And then 5 days after that newsletter, I sent another one. 99-cent sale is ending soon. Get it now. And then, you know, on the last day, I was able to send one more newsletter. This is the last day of the 99-cent sale day. Get it now. And all of those days, I had nice spikes that continued to trigger the algorithm in my favor and let Amazon know, oh, okay, people are still buying. They're interested in this. Let's keep this ball rolling. And so they would keep doing their background, you know, promotion for me. That is like, that's what every author needs. So I had the 99-cent sale like set for a specific time, and then I bumped the price up. But I'm not going to lie, I did end up setting it back down to 99 cents and leaving it there for a very long time. And we're talking at least a year. I left it at 99 cents. But I spiked it up for a little while, just in order to create that sense of exclusivity. So keep that in mind. So would I do this again? Absolutely. As far as like, holding on to the newsletter and not letting them know. I would do this again, for a debut series. For a, established author, you'll see if you follow my newsletter, you'll see that I do let my newsletter know about pre-orders now. And for later books in a series, I don't worry about most of these things at all. Later books in the series, honestly, they sell on the strength of that first book. If your first book launches well, then the later books in this, if it's a continuous series like this and not a series of standalones, those launch campaigns are so they're so small scale. They're such little blips. They're just not a big deal. But for a first book in a series, I have let the people know about my pre-orders, but I don't push my pre-orders a lot. Maybe just a little bit, because it's a lot easier to create that staggered effect and trigger the algorithm in your favor if you can really hold on to your newsletter. Now, the interesting thing is that a lot of people, they just aren't interested in pre-ordering. I don't know why. That even if they know a pre-order is out there and they know they love the author and they know they want the book, they just won't pre-order. They wait until the day of. And that's fine. Honestly, generally, I feel that way myself. I have a very few authors that I will actually pre-order their books. But yeah, anyway, all that to say, I would hold on to this strategy for book ones in series. But I don't do it as intensely as I did for Daughter of Shades, just simply because, again, I'm in a different place in my career now. But as far as would I do that again? I 100% would do that again. It absolutely, having that newsletter established and 2,000 subscribers, and then being able to utilize that tool and spike those readerships, spike those reads, spike those sales, it was absolutely invaluable. So, the other couple things that I did the day of the official launch, I tried to do, I followed some of Mark Dawson's things that he was talking about at that time. I ran a little Facebook party where I had a whole series of prizes, and in order to win one of the prizes, you had to you had to own a copy of the book and be able to go get answers from specific pages. What does Isla say to Turin at this stage in the book? Find the answer on page such and such. And then if you own the book, you're able to flip to the page, and then you can answer the question and you can win the prize. Theoretically, it's a way to really motivate your readers to just go buy the book, especially if it's 99 cents, so that they can then participate in these games. And it was fun, but as a debut, I didn't have a big Facebook following, and I don't know, it was just, it was a lot more work and a lot more prizes and a lot more just busyness sending out the prizes than was probably actually worth it. It is really thundering here, guys. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's really growly. I'm in my little attic office space too, and I've got a skylight here, so it's it's coming down. It's kind of intense. Anyway, I think we even have a tornado watch at the moment, so if I get blown away in a sudden like tornado gust, please think fondly of me. Anyway, so I probably wouldn't do something like that again for a debut. I mean, it's fun to do those kinds of events, but like I probably wouldn't do that for a debut series going forward. Maybe I should do it again now, though. I've got a nice big established audience now. Maybe I should do something like that for a launch coming up. I'll have to think about that. So the most important step of my debut launch, however, and this is the last one that I'm going to cover this evening, the most important thing that I did after all of those other things were done was actually launching book 2 weeks later. Remember I told you I already had it up for pre-order? I launched that book 2 weeks after book 1. And it wasn't even necessarily because, like, I mean, I was getting decent sales, especially for a debut. I was getting decent sales and decent reviews. It wasn't like there was like a rabid hunger for book 2 at that point. I think I accumulated maybe 200 pre-orders for that one. So I mean, it wasn't a ton, especially considering how many pre-orders I'd had for book 1. But what that did was, long before I even reached the 1 month cliff for book 1, I had already like recharged interest in book 1 by launching book 2. I'm going to speak a little louder because it's getting so loud here. The rule of thumb that you'll hear in the indie circles is your front list sells your back list, and that's absolutely true. Anytime you have a new book come out, it just brings so much more attention and it reinvigorates your back list. So in this case, I knew I wanted to like bump up sales on book 1 again, and one of the best ways to do that was to bring out book 2. And since I had the entire series written and mostly ready to go, this was something I could do. I'd planned enough in advance, and again, keeping in mind my established goals for this launch, this was a really smart move. As far as ranks are concerned, I did not, in that first 2 weeks of launching Daughter of Shades, I was not able to break the top 1,000 with that book. I really, really wanted to. I could not quite break the top 1,000. I got so close. I think I even got to like rank 1,010 or 1,005. I mean, it was so close, and I wanted so badly to get there, and I just wasn't quite able to do it. I didn't do it until I brought out book 2. Book 2 reinvigorated the interest in book 1 so much that I was actually able, with my debut novel in a relatively niche genre, I was able to get to, I think, number 800 or something. I didn't break the top 500, but I was able to get to like number 800 or something like that with my debut novel. And that was entirely due to bringing out book 2 2 weeks later. And again, a lot of that is what I was saying before, of like establishing confidence in your readers too. Like you're letting them know you're there and you're consistent and you're gonna bring it out, and you're gonna be somebody that they can get attached to, and they can get attached to these characters, they can get attached to this world. So that just makes that first book so much more appealing. So yeah, that was a huge step toward actually having a successful launch. Let me double check real quick, make sure I covered all of my notes. Yeah, I mean, after that book 2 launch, I brought out book 3, I think a month later. It might have been 2 months later, and from that point on, I did every other month until the end of the series. So I launched in, I mean, technically the soft launch was late July of 2019, and I brought out the last book in July of 2020. So I was able to, like I said, stay very consistent. And of course, during this time that I was launching, because I'd already written all of the books, I was also writing like mad on the next series, so that even when I had finished launching book 7 of Venetrix, I still just had another 1 month gap, and then the month after that, I brought out book 1 of my next trilogy, the Scarred Mage of Roseward trilogy. So I was able to continue that rapid release every other month pace, or was it every 2 months? I forget. Might have been every other month. Either way, might have been every 2 months. I don't even remember now. It's like so long ago. But either way, I was able to maintain that nice consistent pace without any drag, in large part because of how much work I had done well before I actually launched anything. So that is, I mean, gosh, that was a pretty long talk. That was nearly an hour and a half. That is basically everything. That is walking you through my launch for Daughter of Shades, Sylvia Mercedes, book 1. It was extremely effective in the long run. Again, I did not start earning income off of this series until books 4 or 5 or 6. I don't remember exactly. But I because of that legwork, because of that work that I put into it, fast forward 2 years later, my husband's able to like quit his job. So again, I had very clear goals, achieved those goals. Money, like income, was not the primary goal to start with. Building that reader confidence, building that brand. That was what I was looking for. I had a very strong investment mindset, if that makes sense. Like we invested, I think about $10,000, honestly, into this launch. And it took, it took a while before we actually started like seeing that money back again. So I had very much this is my business and I am investing in my business and I am going to, achieve very specific goals, and I'm looking at very specific, goal posts, along the way. And it worked. It did end up working. I mean, it was scary at times because that's a lot of money to put into something that up until then, like I said, I had 3 previous launches and a lot of failures. So it was a little scary at times. So anyway, but it did work in the long run. So I'm seeing some questions coming in. I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of questions before I close out for the evening. My throat's getting a little tired and I might need a cup of tea pretty soon. But I do want to answer some of these questions. So the first one is from Celeste. She says, was the book 2 pre-order priced at 99 cents, $2.99, or $4.99? That is a really good question. I don't remember. It was either 99 cents or $2.99. It was not $4.99. I don't believe I started charging $4.99 until book 3. Because again, my whole goal was, reduce the barriers, like break down any barriers people might have. And like by book 1, like you'd like to think that they loved book 1 so much that they're like, sure, here's my money. But the truth is I was still a debut author, and they may have really loved book 1, but that doesn't necessarily mean they trust me to continue at that level. So it was either 99 cents or $2.99, but I honestly don't remember which it was. So yeah, sorry, I can't answer more clearly than that. I will say, like I said, I didn't start pricing at $4.99 until book 3, but I did start pricing at $4.99 at book 3, and I consistently continued at that rate. So Kelly wants to know, did you draft both Moonfire Bride books up front as well? I drafted them well before I published it. Well, yes, I did draft them both well before I published them. Book 2, The Sunfire King, as I said at the beginning of this talk, The Sunfire King was a bit of an agony book for me. So I believe I was still making final tweaks on that one right up until a few weeks before I published it. Book 1, though, yeah, I wrote that nearly a year before I published it, or at least I wrote the first draft of it, because I know I did a redraft on that one too, because that was the first one that I wrote in first person present tense, but the first draft I did of it was still third person, because I had always written third person before, and then I decided that I wanted to try a new the first person present with that one, so I redrafted it a little closer to launch time, but it was still a couple months out. Most of the time these days, I'm honestly not that on the ball. If you've been following the videos, you've been watching me agonizing through Doom City Book 3, which I just finished and just sent out, and now it's coming out at the end of the month. So usually these days, I don't have, I write and release. I don't hoard books anymore. Honestly, I just, I had twins, and being able to be that far in advance is just no longer very possible for me. I prefer to be able to, write in advance and have plenty of cushion, but, life is what life is. So here we are. But yeah, so Bryn is asking, if I remember, the physical copies of Venetrix came out somewhat after each ebook instead of together. Was there a marketing strategy behind this? Yeah, yes and no. The big thing there was that I had learned from my previous indie experiences that putting the emphasis on the paperback was a huge mistake. That was still a holdover from my traditional publishing days, to put most of the emphasis on the paperbacks. And I had learned that was not going to be beneficial to me. So I put more emphasis on the ebook, and just really kind of backburnered the paperbacks. And it wasn't that they weren't important to me. I did want beautiful paperback copies out there, but when it came to like picking and choosing where my time was going to go, it was always going to be ebooks that were the priority. So the paperbacks came out a little later. I mean, the other nice thing with that, as I remember, one of the things that went in behind that was also kind of, it was another thing to talk about in my newsletter, because I'm still sending out 3 newsletters a month and I don't have a release every month. So it was kind of nice to have the paperback launch sometimes happen like a month after the ebook launch, because then it was like, okay, well now I have another release that I can talk up in the newsletter. So I think I staggered it like that. So oftentimes the paperback release would be like close to a month after the ebook release. So it was just like another way to like have something interesting and exciting to put in the newsletter. These days, in all honesty, my paperbacks come out late because I just can't quite get my act together fast enough to get everything formatted and proofed and everything on time. And my business model is so very heavily geared toward ebooks. But that being said, I am also like, I think I'm honestly the anomaly. Like most of my like really professional established author friends, like they're so far ahead of the game than me. Like they've got their hardcovers and they've got their paperbacks and they've got their audiobooks and they've got them all ready to go like at the same time, and their launches are like these beautiful extravaganzas and they're so organized and they're so not me. So I wish I could be those people sometimes, but I am not. My like I said, my business model is just very heavily geared toward ebooks right now. Someday maybe I will change that up a little bit. But at this point, like the vast majority of my sales come from ebooks, so it's pretty hard to imagine like emphasizing something else. So I love my paperbacks, I love my hardbounds, but they come out as I have time to produce them. Same with the audiobooks. So Brittany's asking, what was your previous indie experience? I kind of covered that more from at the beginning of the video. So when this is done, you can go back and listen to the beginning and did you learn anything else valuable from it? Again, like I kind of covered all of those things at the beginning of the video. I mean, like there's always more stuff that I could, talk about that I learned. Again, you learn more from your mistakes than you learn from your successes. And I made so many mistakes. It's not even funny. But yeah, I mean, you can look at the end of the video or the beginning of the video for that. Does anybody else have any questions while I am still here? So Kelly's saying in a future chat she'd like to hear a bit more about your experience with audiobooks. Well, I mean, I can tell you right now, Kelly, that like my experience with audiobooks is like this. Like it's not even really worth a future chat. Again, there are indie authors out there who have way more experience with audio and would be able to help you out with that way more than I can. I have most of my books in audio, but honestly, I sell them. I sell the rights to Podium, and they do all the work. They find the narrators, they produce it. I do some promotion. They do most of the promotion. So it's more like a traditional contract that way, in that I don't make the majority of the money. But I'm okay with that, honestly. I have personally produced only one audio, which was the Scarred Mage of Roseword trilogy, where I put up the money and produced it. But it was a lot of money and a lot more work and stress and time than I actually want to put into audio at this point, because again, my business model is geared very heavily toward ebooks. So so I contract out at this point. I mean, I would like to ideally like get to where I'm not contracting that out and where I own my own audio rights and am like publishing and producing that on my own. But I don't know. I'm the mother of 4 very small children, including like infant twins, and like time is just like at a premium right now. So I love Podium, though. I've worked with 2 different audio companies. I've worked with Podium and Tantor. Both were great experiences, but I have to say I really like working with Podium. Like, they're just really great people, and really great to work with. So yeah, if there's any other questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I think I'm going to go ahead and, okay, I see Susan's got a question here. Some of these are coming in at kind of odd places. So Susanna, said, what's your current process with timing your launches with scheduling, editing, and or beta readers? That's a good question. So current process, sorry, I have to talk a little louder because the storm is getting worse. So current process, I try to finish writing a book a month before the launch. Once I've finished writing it, I read through it twice, smoothing out the writing and hunting for as many typos as I can. Then at just about exactly a month before it's going to launch, I send it out to my ARC readers. And in my ARC reading team, my advanced reader team, I've got a series of different people who are like really fantastic, like typo hunter, typo crunchers. And so they're like, my vanguard for the, copy editing, basically. And I give them a week to send typos back to me. And then I just send those typos and the manuscript to my copy editor, and she plugs in their typos and then does her own copy editing as well. Sends the book back to me usually like 2 weeks to 12 days before the actual launch date. Then I do my own formatting. I format it for ebook very quickly, get it loaded. You have to have it loaded, 4 days before the launch, the actual scheduled launch day. So I have it loaded in, usually with time to spare, but not always. And then if it is a book 1 in a series, the soft launch will happen on the scheduled date, and then the hard launch will happen a few days after that. If it is a book 3, like the Doomed City book that is about to come out this month, then the launch date is the same. I don't try to do a big staggered launch. As far as like editing and beta, I don't really use beta readers anymore. I used to, but I don't anymore. And with my editing, I really only use a copy editor. Like I've talked about this in previous videos, that I have worked as a line and developmental editor, and that happens to be one of my skills, is as a line editor and developmental editor. I am not a copy editor, and I desperately need my copy editor and my typo crunchers and all of you beautiful people that are good with like commas and things. I am not that, but like developmental editing, I don't usually like. I just don't need that. It's a skill set that I have for myself. But that doesn't mean that I think that all of my books are perfect and like are perfectly developed and need no help. But they're good enough generally that readers are able to enjoy them, and I don't usually need outside help with that, which I'm fortunate for. Again, it's important to know your own skill sets and know what outside help you need, and then time your launches according to that. But that was a really great question. Does anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. It was a lot of information tonight. I know. I feel like, tired having talked this long. Obviously, I also really love talking about this. I worked very hard to gain all of this knowledge, and then I have worked very hard gaining a lot of experience, both good and bad. And after having done all of that work, it's really nice to actually talk about it and share it, and hopefully it's beneficial for all of you, and you find some useful tidbits along the way that you can use for your own careers as you're developing. And I would love to hear from all of you of which of these things you might try or have tried, or if you've got slightly different perspective on some of the things I've talked about. You know, I'd love to hear. I mean, I am always like refining my process, and it's, I mean, I say that it's also really too easy to get into a rut sometimes. So if you've got some alternate ideas for things you think I ought to try, send them my way, because, you know, I don't want to be stuck in a rut. I do want to, like, you know, continue growing and expanding and trying and experimenting. So anyway, you guys have been great. I will be posting this on YouTube, so you guys can watch it back anytime that you like. I will be doing another talk in, I'm not sure, a couple of weeks, probably not 2 weeks, probably more like 3 or 4 weeks, concentrating on blurbs, I believe is what we're going to concentrate on next time. It will not be this long, because like it just won't need to be this long. But I've had a lot of people express interest in like my theories for blurbs, so hopefully that will be useful for you. So anyway, I'm going to go have some tea and possibly some dinner and then crash and sleep. So hope you all have a great night. I'll see you later.